Hello again, I'm Robert Fithen, and the big list for Record Store Day 2023, the Black Friday edition, has just been released, and I've seen quite a few reactions on it. Most of them are kind of like, but it does have some interesting things on there, a few things, like the regionally famous Bottle Rockets, the 30th anniversary of that. That could be kind of cool. There's a 13th Floor Elevators album right at the top of the list. First thing I noticed, might be all right if they just kind of mix out that whole electric jug thing, if that's even on that particular album. Also, the Monkees, their debut album. I'm all about the Monkees. I grew up with that album and a bunch of their albums. I know every single note on it by heart. Love the Monkees. But do we really need another reissue of that album? There's been, I think, 5 already since the resurgence of vinyl. One just came out 2 years ago that a lot of people seem really happy about. There's a Doors concert, some more live stuff like LA Guns Live and a bunch of live stuff. Live is hit and miss because you never know about the sound quality. A lot of people kind of getting burned on some of these live Record Store Day releases because they're kind of bootleg quality. And some people are even like, well, it seems like they probably already released everything and there's really nothing left. Oh, I don't think so. In fact, it got me thinking, what would my dream Record Store Day be like at this point? If I was in charge of the list and I could put just about whatever I want on there, what would it be? Well, first of all, they'd all be color vinyl. They'd all be from the original analog tapes if they were available, and they'd all be $5.99. It's a dream. It's a dream. So right up front, a huge band. I definitely would sell AC/DC, High Voltage, the original Australian version of this. In fact, the original Australian version of their first 3 or 4 albums, I think, would be great Record Store Day releases. High Voltage hasn't been issued on vinyl since 1989. There's been a couple of bootlegs, done on color vinyl, but there's not been an official re-release of this or their other couple albums that were out early. They have different track listings. A lot of these tracks showed up later on in the 74 Jailbreak release in the US, but these would be with the original covers, the original track listings, and it would save you about $300 or $400 if you're going to try to get the originals of these. So yeah, AC/DC High Voltage, the Australian version, great way to kick off a Record Store Day. Bob Seger, back in 72. This thing hasn't been on vinyl since its original release in 1973. As a matter of fact, it was never even reissued on CD. This is a great album. I know Bob Seger, I guess, doesn't like it, but what the hell does he know? Re-release it anyway, put it back on vinyl. It's got the original studio version of Turn the Page, and I've been working. Those are big live versions from Live Bullet, but it's got the incredible Bob Seger song. I love it so much, called Rosalie, about the radio program director that broke out all these great songs and all these great bands in the Michigan area. Love Rosalie. It was later covered by Thin Lizzy, but I love the Bob Seger version, and it's really only available on Back in 72, and if you want it, it's about $400 to get that record at this point. Away from rock, how about those old funk and soul issues out of the 70s that have never been released on CD, never been re-released on vinyl? There's 2 minutes. That would be its own video to go into that. But one I love is Leon Haywood, Come and Get Yourself Some. This is an absolute funky delight. Now, it's not all that expensive if you want an original from 1975, but they're really hard to find in good condition. That's the thing about the Leon Haywood album. And it's never been re-released on vinyl. You've got to get the 1975 one if you want one. So a nice color version of that. Leon Haywood, Come and Get Yourself Some, featuring I Want to Do Something Freaky to You. I think that was sampled by Dr. Dre. You think that kind of fame would make it enough to get a reissue, but we're still hoping for that. Back into the 90s. Now, I'm not a big proponent of 90s vinyl. 90s to me is like a CD era, and I'm fine with a lot of the CDs, but there are a few that kind of stand out, like, the first 4 Danzig albums. Those would be huge. Why have those no official releases yet? Danzig, Danzig 2, Danzig 3, How the Gods Kill, and Danzig 4P. Danzig 2, if you're going to re-release that on vinyl, make sure the cover unfolds into an upside-down cross. That's a necessity. Don't forget to do that with Lucifuge. But yeah, Danzig, the first 4 releases, you could release them individually. You could do a Danzig box set. People would absolutely go nuts for those because there hasn't been a Danzig reissue of anything since their original releases. I don't even know if Danzig 4 even ever came out on vinyl. But yeah, I mean, there's been all kinds of bootlegs. And the rumor is it's Glenn Danzig himself doing these bootlegs and just cashing in on them. So maybe that's why there's no official version. I still have my 1988 Danzig album. I'm definitely holding on to that. I talked about it on Instagram. So you can check out my review there. Also told the story about how I worked for Glenn Danzig one day when we did a concert. My radio station did his concert, and he decided to show up with no road crew. Fun times. And speaking of radio adventures, the only concert I've ever been in charge of promoting, Monster Magnet, along with Buck Cherry, actually, but we'll just talk about the Monster Magnet part of it. The album Power Trip. This is actually an original from 1998. Goes for about $130, something like that. But the reissue that came out, I want to say around 2016, that goes for about $120. So you're not really saving a lot of money by getting the reissue over this original, which I don't even think there was a U.S. pressing of this. I believe this is a German pressing of Monster Magnet's Power Trip. Yeah, promoted their concert along with Buck Cherry, working with a first-time budget person who had never heard of a writer, a concert writer. And they were in charge of the budget. So that's just one of the little stories that go along with that fiasco. But yeah, Monster Magnet, would love to see a new reissue for this because I don't think I would get it. I already have the original, but I know a lot of people would love to see this come out again. More 90s releases that have not seen vinyl or are super rare on vinyl. How about Tori Amos from the Choir Girl Hotel from 1998. She's also got Scarlet's Walk from the 2000s. I don't think that's readily available on vinyl either. In fact, the Choir Girl Hotel will run you a little over $300 if you want an original of that. So that could use a reissue. A lot of Tori Amos fans out there, including myself, that would love to have her on some nice, quiet vinyl spinning around. On the opposite end of quiet vinyl, you have Clutch. Some of their early albums, very hard to get on vinyl. And Transnational Speedway League has never been officially released on vinyl. There's like one bootleg out there somewhere, but there's never been an official vinyl release of that. So yeah, that would be great with a Shogun named Marcus on there. Crank that up. Clutch. They got that space rock thing going on later on that just serves vinyl really well to hear stuff like that on a record. And speaking of that, Beck, Midnight Vultures from 2000, that's his kind of disco era type album. It sounds like something that's from the 70s anyway. Well, it's got a little bit of 90s flair in there too. It came out in 2000, but yeah, that definitely needs to be on vinyl. A Beck album that's not on vinyl, and it's the disco one. Put Beck Midnight Vultures on vinyl. Again, for $5.99 for Record Store Day. This is a dream we're doing here. Tool, just like the Danzig, there's these bootleg Tool albums absolutely everywhere, and I definitely support people selling those. I definitely support people buying them. If Maynard James Keenan doesn't have the good sense to put out these releases officially so he can make some money off of them and people will definitely buy them, then by all means, bootleg them. Buy those. That's all that's going to be available. I felt the same way when I was a movie fanatic, that if the studios aren't smart enough to put out these movies that people want on DVD and then later Blu-ray, then you might as well just get the bootlegs. Somebody needs to be making some money off of it. Might as well be people going through the trouble of finding an official print and doing that homemade thing. At least you get to have it on vinyl like this. This is my this is an official Anima or Anima on vinyl. Never opened, but the shrink wrap is coming off of it. I got this as a promotional item. I've got a lot of use out of this in YouTube videos, always showing this. Very proud of this. But yeah, this has never been released since then officially, so very hard to get your hands on one of these. And I don't think 10,000 Days has ever been on vinyl. If it is, it's extremely rare. All the bootlegs everywhere. Maynard James Keenan, come on and put the Tool albums on vinyl. Quit playing around with people's minds. Morphine and the album Yes from 1995. This had This did have a reissue in 2018. About the lowest you can get that for now is about $120. Now, you have to be careful with Morphine because as great as this is going to sound on vinyl, if it ever decides to come out officially, you might doze off. You might just kind of, it is called Morphine after all, just kind of doze off. And then, if you don't have an automatic turntable, the needle's just going to, it's just going to play that out groove just over and over again. It's going to wear down your stylus. So be very, very careful if the Morphine Yes album ever does come out on vinyl. Now, also, we move away from the 90s back to the 60s. I was talking about some funk and soul that definitely needs reissues. There's a whole crop of those 60s psych albums that people have been bootlegging. People like myself have been wanting. I've got a few CDs. But where is the end? Introspection on vinyl. Where is that reissue? It hasn't been out since 2014. That copy is going to cost you well over $100 if you can find one. Originally came out in 1969, produced by Bill Wyman. This is an incredible album. You don't even have to even be into old psychedelic rock to like this album. It's just a great album all the way around, and the sound is crisp and clear. It's high fidelity. Get the original analog tapes, and please reissue the end introspection on that nice, like that foil mirror type cover that it has. Excellent. It's very hard to bootleg that, by the way. So yeah, you want to do that to kind of get people away from the bootlegs that are just have the white cover. More psychedelic reissues. How about the Jefferson Airplane Takes Off? Now, I talked about this in one of my latest videos, how I just acquired version number 2 of this. There's 3 different versions of this. It all has to do with songs being dropped off because they were censored and edited and then changed up lyrics for version 3. But version number 1, the original one, very, very hard to find. I do not have it. I only have the second and third versions of this. And it has the original track listing, including Running Around This World, where they talk about sex on acid and going on trips. Not on the version 2 and 3. And of course, it has the original lyrics of the other songs before they were changed. This has been reissued back in 2015. There is also an Italian reissue of this, but they don't have the Running Around This World song on there. Why would you reissue this and leave a song off and do like the second version reissue? That doesn't make any sense. What, are they still worried about the word trips in 2015? Reissue this, put all 12 songs on it. Nice color vinyl. You could do the blue, you could do the white, you could do the red. You could do a swirl. Whatever you want. Jefferson Airplane Takes Off, the original version. Please reissue this as well. And as long as we're speaking of psychedelic stuff, my number one grail, my number one wish, above all else, I've talked about this album, countless videos. Kaleidoscope is the band's name. Tangerine Dream is the name of the album. It came out in 1967. My absolute favorite of the lesser-known, obscure psychedelic albums of the 60s. This did have a reissue back in 2017 for Record Store Day, but it sold out very quickly. It was on orange color vinyl, and it was autographed by like 3 members of the band. It would have had all the members, but one of them was sick or something and couldn't make the autograph session. And it came with a 7-inch bonus single. Please redo that. And then have all 4 band members autograph it this time. But yeah, just reissue the exact same one. Color vinyl, 7-inch, autographed. I hear that it sounds great. Kaleidoscope, Tangerine Dream, and this time do it in the US for Record Store Day, because I believe the other one was only in the UK. So if you're going to try to get one, the original from 67 is outrageous. It's like $700 or something. But the reissue even is well over $100, and you usually have to get it imported, which then you have all the shipping charges with that. Nobody's ever selling the autographed one, which is the one I keep waiting for. Just reissue it, please. Kaleidoscope, Tangerine Dream. Another psychedelic classic, 1968's Bittersweet with Hypnotic One, an original from 1968, a little bit over $100. There was one bootleg release somewhere. Redo this one, it will absolutely sell, and maybe people don't know who Bittersweet is, but with a little bit of figuring it out, maybe they'll stream it, they'll be like, I want that. They will get that. Please release that for Record Store Day. Also, the Nightcrawlers with Little Black Egg. That's a song that used to show up on a lot of the psychedelic compilations, but you definitely want the whole album. Really cool cover art there. Came out in 1967. There was a French vinyl reissue from 1986. That's as long as it's been since this thing has been re-released on vinyl. 1986, definitely due for a reissue from the Nightcrawlers. Also, Churchills, the Israeli psychedelic group. They were out, I think, 1969, I think this came out. Definitely a different sound from a completely different part of the world doing psychedelic music. 2015 reissue, already skyrocketed in price, and it's also extremely hard to find. It's definitely out of print, so you've got to get a used one, and there's currently none available, at least on Discogs. And when they came out with it, they came with a free t-shirt. You can keep the t-shirt this time and put the money into keeping the price down. Again, all these are $5.99 in my Record Store Day Dream. Churchill's there. Also, The Moon with Without Earth from 1968. Now, an original of that, not quite as expensive, about $80, but they're really, really hard to find. Pretty rare stuff there, so maybe do a reissue of that. So again, I could do a 3-hour video on all of the great psych stuff from the late 60s, early 70s that could definitely stand to be reissued. Again, on some nice, colorful, swirling, splatter color vinyl. That would be awesome. but I'll just mention those few for this video, and you can let your mind kind of wander about all the other ones. But definitely, let's get that Tangerine Dream from Kaleidoscope in there. That is an absolute must. How about we go a little bit harder with the acid rock and the band Fire and Could You Understand from 1973. No reissues of this except for bootlegs. I've seen the bootlegs everywhere. I don't know how good they sound, but why not just do an official one? The tapes are somewhere, or they wouldn't be able to do these bootlegs. And if you don't have the tapes, maybe they're just doing it off an old record. Well, you do it off the old record too, but just do it professionally, and I don't know, get the band to sign it or put some photos in it, make it a gatefold, do something special with it. That's another thing about these reissues. Don't just reissue them with a paper inner sleeve that's all white and just a black record, and that's about it. Let's put some liner notes in there. Let's make them gatefolds. Let's put some photos on the inner sleeve. Let's make them polylined. Let's just put inserts in there. Let's do it right with all these inserts, or with all these reissues. St. Anthony's Fire, just like the band Fire, another great hard rock thing. This is the stuff the bikers used to listen to in 1970. There's been a 2013 reissue that was about $70 at this point. Kind of hard to find, but let's do a real one, and make it sound really great. The artwork won't be that hard to reproduce. Sometimes with these reissues, you get kind of splattery looking pixelated artwork. Not with the St. Anthony's Fire, though. As you can tell, that would be pretty easy to replicate there. Back into the 80s. We've done the 90s. We've talked about the 70s funk stuff. We've talked about the 60s psych. What about some great stuff from the 80s, like Husker Du, New Day Rising? This came out in 1986, or was it 84? It was the mid-80s. There's been a reissue that came out in 2011. There was a couple of different vinyl variants. One was pink and one was gray. But those are pretty much missing in action. They are very, very hard to find. Husker Du's got a lot of fans out there like myself. Would love to see a reissue, especially of New Day Rising. REM Document from 1987. Now this one isn't super hard to find. It isn't super expensive. It isn't $120. But it's REM, it would be super popular. I mean, people would go... last record store day, the Verve Pipe was out, and people went nuts for that. The Verve Pipe, people. Come on, that song, The Freshman? People went nuts for that. If people are going to go nuts for the Verve Pipe, they're going to go nuts for anything, and I'm certainly thinking that REM could be something where people would be interested in it. And Document is one of their best albums from the 80s. This had a reissue in 2018. On gold vinyl, but even that one is getting just a little bit pricey. Prices are only going to go up and up and up. It's probably time for a nice reissue. Tracy Chapman. Now here is an album, her debut, just called Tracy Chapman. It's the one with Fast Car on it. Came out in 1989. Hasn't had any kind of vinyl release since its original 1989 release. There's a bootleg going around. Why not do the original? It's not like it's on some rare, obscure label. It's on Elektra. I'm sure the master tapes are right there. Do a reissue of Tracy Chapman's debut. I'll get it. People will get it. People will love it. Even though there is a song on there about getting rid of all your material possessions and you don't need a bunch of things. And I guess records would be that. Just ignore that song and go with the final reissue of Tracy Chapman. Another one like the REM Document. I cannot believe there has not been an issue of Tracy Chapman since literally the year it was released. 30-something years ago. That to me, that's crazy. And especially with that country cover. Somebody did it, was it Luke Combs? Did a country cover of Fast Car that shot up the charts. You'd think there'd be interest again in Tracy Chapman's version, but no, it's crickets on the reissue of that. Speaking of country, all kinds of country stuff that still needs to see some vinyl releases, at least for some of them for the first time. A lot of 90s country. We've seen the umpteenth re-release of Garth Brooks albums. How about Dwight Yoakam? This time, incredible album from Dwight Yoakam. Came out in 1993, has never been released on vinyl, and that would sound great on a record. Got the songs in there like Fast As You, 1,000 Miles From Nowhere. Those are two of my favorite Dwight Yoakam songs. They're going to sound great on a record. It's country music. You want to throw that on, crank it up, and just kind of, oh man, Dwight Yoakam this time not on vinyl is crazy, especially considering, again, record label, it's on Warner Brothers, which Rhino would be the one to re-release that. Rhino has re-released things like 5 and 6 times at this point and has never never even released once. Dwight Yoakam's this time on vinyl. I don't understand that. And finally, while we're talking about country, let's talk about Willie Nelson. unbelievably, this is his only compilation of all his Columbia hits on vinyl. This Greatest Hits and Some That Will Be, that came out in 1981. I think it's high time for either a follow-up to this, or maybe just a Willie Nelson hits box set from Columbia. That would be awesome to see on Record Store Day. This was, like I said, released in 1981, so the hits stopped there. There's no Little Old Fashioned Karma, there's no City of New Orleans, nothing from the 90s on here. And it's kind of a spotty release anyway. Now, it does have a lot of great hits on here, and it's a terrific album, but it's kind of strange. It starts off with 2 songs that aren't hits. I guess those were the ones that will be, but they, spoiler alert, they weren't. And it also, really annoyingly, breaks up Whiskey River and Stay a Little Longer, which on the live album, these are the live versions, they're back to back. They roll into each other. For some reason on this, they split them up. It doesn't make any sense. And The Good-Hearted Woman and Mama Don't Let Your Babies Grow Up to Be Cowboys, those are Willie Nelson and Waylon Jennings duets, the hit versions. On this album, it's just the Willie Nelson version. There's no Waylon Jennings, because that's the RCA thing. So maybe they can figure that out with the logistics there and come up with a really nice Willie Nelson hits package on vinyl, because like I said, unbelievably, this is the only one currently on vinyl. And I know on CD, he's got like 16 different compilations. So definitely need to get Willie Nelson in there as well. And finally, the Beach Boys Pet Sounds Sessions. As popular as that album is, as awesome as that album is, and they had that CD box set, 4 CDs that came out in, I believe it was 1993 or somewhere around there. It's run you about $40-45 now. It's got the mono version, the stereo version, but it's got all of these outtakes and all of these different versions of the songs with different people on vocals and different like takes, and it's got one that's just like the bass and the drums, and it really picks apart the album Pet Sounds and lets you hear all the different variations of it. It's like a work in progress. It really tells you how the album came together. I'm shocked that this hasn't been released on vinyl, and it's high time that the Beach Boys Pet Sounds sessions came out on vinyl, because, you know, it's just an incredible album, and I really hope that this comes out.
No, not Pet Sounds. Not more Pet Sounds. No. What a awesome, sweet dream that turned into an absolute nightmare. And I had like 30 or 40 more albums to dream about. Well, what are some albums you'd like to see reissued for Record Store Day? Let me know in the comments. I'm Robert Fithen. Thank you for watching.